What's up, everybody? It has been way too long, but man, oh man, are we excited to be back. It is, it's almost surreal, but it is awesome to be talking not only Nats, that certainly comes and goes, as we all know as Nationals fans, but this new era of Nationals baseball. I am Nick. I have been all over the place the past 10 months since our last recording, and I am still joined by the one and the only Trey. We are happy to be back talking Nats baseball, and we'll get into everything here in a bit, but it's been too long. We're hoping to, you know, um, keep in touch throughout the season, maybe not every week, but certainly keep in touch throughout the season and see how this next era of Nationals baseball unfolds. But Trey, my man, what is going on?
Nick, it has been quite a while, as you said before, as we were talking about before we got on here. It feels much longer than it actually was, because, like you said, it was only been 10 months, but man, it felt like 2 or 3 years since we've done this. A lot has happened. Probably one of the reasons why it feels like that, because obviously we haven't recorded an episode not only since all the front office changes and coaching
Right.
staff changes, but since the firings in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the season. So. Yeah, lots to get into and to discuss, and a lot of different wholesale changes in this organization.
For sure, a lot of reason to be optimistic. I think not even I think I know for a fact, like we got into this very divisive point in the Nationals fandom because for a litany of reasons, but coming off 2019, it was like how long is this window, right? Can we regroup, revamp, whatever re word, retool was the big one, right? It wasn't a rebuild, it was a retool, all that kind of stuff. Um, so there was all of that, and then some people thought the window went way past when it really what
Yeah.
really did. And then even when we were rebuilding, it was just like there was just this kind of you know just resistance to admit it. And with the firing of Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez, it finally kind of just admitted to everyone, to the fan base, like, hey, we do need a new era, right? Like it was, we won a World Series, we had a lot of success, but every team needs to go through reorganizational periods. Like it just happens. It's cyclical. It's the way things go, right? So for me personally, and Trey, I don't know if you felt the same. Like we had been doing Nationals content for years, pre-pandemic, which is seems like a whole different lifetime, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
um and it just felt like the same old story for 22, 23, 24, 25. And it's just like, man, I I'm not going to be you know the doom poster and act like the sky's falling like a lot of people like to do as well. But it was really hard to even find any positives about the team. Like the positives you would find, like CJ or James Wood or Mackenzie Gore, who obviously we'll talk about here in a little bit. Like there was always a but, right? It was just like, oh, CJ's great, but Davies, he's like always in Davies' doghouse and he can play defense. It's like, Dylan Cruz is going to be great, but he's hurt. And just like, oh, damn, man. Like I just, so anyways,
Yeah.
long-winded way of saying, like, it just got very tiring. So I think for me personally, I needed a reset, and I was super, super happy when the Nationals admitted it, because I'm all the way back in now, right? I'm not, certainly not a fair weathered fan. I've been a fan since 2005, since they came here, and I'll be a fan till the day I die. But it was nice to have a breath of fresh air, truly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of one step forward, two step back type of moves that just, like you were saying, it would be like, yes, oh, great, CJ had a great first half, and we have also the worst pitching staff and one of the worst hitting cores in the league. So it's just
Right,
like
right.
trying to find, and honestly, it's probably a good thing that we were too busy to record, especially leading up before Davey and Rizzo were let go, because I'm sure that the episodes would not have been very, very positive at all. We probably would have sounded
100%.
because I was definitely at the point where I was like, even I mean, I'm not the most optimistic fan in the world. There's definitely fans
No,
in
me
our fan
neither.
base that are way more positive than me, but I'm not a Debbie Downer. So I'd gotten to that point where I was like, I can't muster any energy for this team. Um, Having said that, I still watched almost every game that I could,
Yeah,
but
because we love torturing
we
ourselves.
of course do. But yeah, it was getting hard to watch. So just yeah, that like you said, it's just the first step. You got to admit there's a problem, or you're never going to solve it. And it was pretty obvious for a while to a lot of us, but finally became obvious to the ownership that that just wasn't going to happen again with this core. And I get that you want to hold on to your guys that won for you, but it was kind of lucky that they had won at that point, anyways, considering how little we had invested into analytics. A lot of great veteran players will help that. So that, but once you get past that, yeah, we were just struggling to stay afloat, and it's good. There's definitely already been some tangible changes in terms of the technology aspects in spring training that I've seen. They've got the Traject Arc machine now. They've got a bunch of different ways to measure our guys' you know, bat speed, bat angles, attack angles, velos, spin rates. They already had some of that stuff, but now it's like full blown. So it's good to see that change.
Right. Um, yeah, so it's a new era of National Baseball, truly. It is like so the change was one thing, right? I think, you know, a lot of people knew it was coming. It was just a matter of when, right? Whether it was just Davy or Davy and Rizzo, as it ultimately ended up being, change was coming. Change was needed. They had tried and tried and tried, and it just wasn't working, right? For me, I am I was very surprised, and even still, I'm very surprised at like what a pivot it was, because it is almost the complete opposite. And I think that's a good thing for what it's worth. But it is like you were doing things one way for so long, and you did win a World Series, but even that like feels like a lifetime ago at this point. The game is, it's crazy to say, but it's very different than it was
No, it is crazy how
7 years
quickly
ago.
the game is evolving nowadays.
Right. It's insane, right? And if you can't keep up, you will get left behind. And not only left behind, you will be a bottom dweller perennially, as we've seen, right? There's been times where we're a lottery team and just weren't eligible because we had sucked for so long, right?
Yep.
Like that's just, it's a separate thing. But yeah, it was very surprising to see, the youth movement, so to speak. Like Taboni's, I don't have his, Paul Taboni hired president of baseball ops from the Red Sox organization. I think he's like 38.
Yeah,
um
and he might be the oldest guy on the entire
right.
staff at
And
this point.
yeah, and then he brings in Blake Butera, which was a surprising hire in its own right. He was kind of a player development guy, the direct, not just, random player development. He's like the director of player development. I shouldn't sell him short, of the Tampa Bay Rays, right? So if you're hiring from a player development background, you there's not many places you could do better from hiring from than the Rays, right? They
Hmm.
obviously, that's their bread and butter. But he's 34, and he had coached in the minors and had some success, but only he had only coached for like a year or two before transitioning to player development. So it is kind of like, if you think about it in NFL terms, just hiring that young hotshot coordinator who didn't have play calling experience, but you kind of project a couple years down the road and you're like, yeah, this guy is going to be him. So, we're going to give him the leash to figure things out and make his mistakes, and then, count on him learning and growing within the role. Um, I love that. Truly, I think it's a great pivot for this organization. Um, and I want to get your thoughts, especially on the Butera hiring. But I think it's a great pivot, considering, you know, the team's still not spending money. We'll talk about that later as well. So if you're gonna be competitive, it has to be from a player development aspect. You have to be a Brewers, you have to be a Rays, you have to be, even though we're not a small market team, you have to operate as such and, develop from within to create something consistent and something that could be really competitive down the line.
Yeah, I mean, for as for Butera, the hiring, I think it's extremely interesting, and I think it's a good thing that they let him pick his staff, and honestly pick a staff that's very large, because this is a way
Yes.
bigger group
Yes.
than we have had ever. So, allowed they allowed him to pick guys that he knows. He brought over his bench coach Michael Johns from Tampa as well. So he knows a lot of these guys, but also a lot of these guys have been around many different organizations. We got some guys from Driveline as well. So just a large group of guys from around the league that have worked with a lot of different players, and probably some players that we have now or are going to get in the future. A lot of waiver claims. That seems to be Taboni's strategy. Seems to be claiming a lot of players off waivers, hoping that some of them cleared, and just to get our AAA depth back, because we really
Hmm.
have no depth in this organization at all. I mean, so we've done some good things with trades and getting some of that depth back, but it's still not quite where you want it to be. So it's a good strategy. And obviously, having a large staff doesn't automatically make things better, but it helps, focus and kind of, maybe develop a little bit more of a rapport one-on-one with certain guys, for certain coaches. And
Right.
so right now, I think it looks good. Obviously, he's super young, and we're gonna have to have patience. There's really no choice. I think
Hmm.
fans probably feel like sick of that because they've been having patience for so long. But at the end of the day, this is something that should have happened like 3 years ago. It's just we got to it too late. So yeah, we're gonna have to rebuild again, but we're gonna have to give it some time. I'm definitely gonna have more patience for this inexperienced group than I did for a group that had so much experience and seemed to just be kind of stubborn and stuck in their own ways.
Right. I love the point you made about how large of a staff it is because, you know, we don't have to ever talk about David Martinez again, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think my thoughts and feelings on David Martinez were all that, uh, difficult to interpret towards the end of his tenure. Um, but I think it's very clear, like he was protecting his staff, which I think made his staff coach hard for him. The players played hard for him, at least at some point, right? Because he protected his guys. But because of that, it was it was stagnant, and you know he was putting a lot on those coaches to do more than they were capable of, quite frankly, right? So you move forward with Blake Butera, and again, I don't know him necessarily, but right, it's he's coming in with no managerial experience, not a bench coach, nothing at the major league level. And what does he do? He's like, I want more coaches, so that way there's less on my plate. We have an increased division of labor, to really cast a wide net amongst the coaching staff and cover a lot of things that will come up because he knows, I know, this team needs a lot of help, right? We have really good pieces, but it needs a lot of help. We are not the most disciplined team in any area, in any facet of the game, right? So having a large staff, is certainly a way to address the issues and hopefully plug a lot of these holes, fundamentally and whatnot within this very young team. So I'm excited. Just really quickly, I'm not going to break down uh, every assistant or anything like that, but I would like to kind of just say where everyone's last stop was from, because you mentioned that like we have guys from all over, and I think they did a really good job of just kind of diversifying their coaching assets, so to speak. So
Hmm.
uh we got the former first base coach for Tampa, that's Michael Johns. He's the elder statesman of the group, but he's only 50, right? We got the former Twins hitting coach, and he had a couple of hitting coaches. I believe he was the hitting coach for the Orioles prior to that. We got a drive line guy as our assistant hitting coach. We got a AAA hitting coach for Seattle. We got a former assistant pitching coach for Cincinnati. Doolittle's back, which I thought was a very wise and kind of just like good move,
He's like the only guy, I
carryover.
believe, that's
Right,
that's
but
still
I think
here.
it's good to have
Oh,
some connection.
DiBartolo as well. I forgot to put this on our notes, but DiBartolo is like in a scouting role, so he's technically still here too, but
That is
like
true.
kind of out of the way. Doolittle's still like on the staff, which is he's pretty much the only guy.
Right. We got a rookie ball manager for the Cubs, high A manager for the Brewers, pitching coach for Indiana University, Rangers catching coordinator, major league development coach for Baltimore, Marlins first base, like just all over the place. Like some experience, some, not necessarily major league experience, but like the driveline guys, for example. More guys were from driveline than just that. This was more just like last stops. But we have differing backgrounds. Like some of these guys got a lot of their experience from coaching. Some of these guys got their experience from things like driveline and analytics and kind of like new wave uh, ideology and philosophies in coaching and baseball in particular, right? So we're really diversifying, and I think it's going to lead to a nice blend at the end of the day. Not to mention all of the new equipment to kind of get us caught up to the modern day that
Yeah,
we've been
for
asking
real.
for years, like you mentioned. So
Yeah.
it's really cool to see. Um, but yeah, like you said, we have to have patience. The leash is long, and our leash as fans needs to be long because they're they're going to take some time to figure things out, as we've seen, and we'll go from there. But this is not an overnight thing. This is not a 1 year thing. It's probably not a 2 year thing.
Yeah.
So we just got to be patient.
And one thing I wanted to add about the staff that I just remembered actually was that the AAA staff has the same coaching positions, which I think is a really important thing for a young team because we're going to have so many guys going up and down and up and down, and they need that consistency. It'll help them be better. So I think that was also a great addition to have. Basically, every position, coaching position on the major league staff is also with the AAA staff.
Yeah, just the continuity between levels is really cool to see. This coaching staff that I just ran down was obviously the major league coaching staff. They added a lot of staff to their minor league levels as
Mhm.
well. Not necessarily, I mean, there was some overhaul and some replacements, but they also just added coaches, right? So it was kind of just I guess, an organizational philosophy, like, hey, more coaches is a good thing, right? Like we can really just hone in, be a master of our role as opposed to trying to, juggle all these different positions and whatnot. So it was really cool to see. But yeah, I think there's coming into this team and the way it has run for the past couple of years, it seems like Taboni and I assume Butera had to be on the same page given his player development background. Also, obviously, Taboni hiring him out of all the candidates, they had to come in with the idea of like the minor league system is where we start. Um, and we're going to build depth. We're going to develop the guys our way. We're going to bring in our guys and, probably ship out some guys that we're not as high on as we've kind of seen. Ship out or let go of. There's been a lot of turnover, especially at the minor league level. And, we're going to see the 40 man when it's all shaken out at the end of spring training look completely different than it did last year. And neither of those things are a bad thing in my mind.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a full overhaul. Nobody's necessarily safe, which I think is
You got to earn
somewhat
it.
good. But yeah, I think that's definitely a good thing as well. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we're gonna be seeing a lot. I feel like during the season there's gonna be a lot more moves made than maybe normally we would have seen for this group. Like a lot more waiver claims,
Right.
a lot more options, a lot more DFAs perhaps. So. Yeah, but I think obviously they've already gotten a little aggressive on the trade market,
Mm-hmm.
trying to a guy like CJ and not, ended up not moving him quite yet, but also making a few moves that I think that we should probably discuss. One of the big ones was Harry Ford, formerly of the Seattle Mariners organization, coming over in a trade for Jose A. Ferrer, and Ferrer he's a good asset. I mean, he's going to be great for Seattle. I can almost guarantee you. He will be great over there. He had a lot of team control left. But at the end of the day, he's a reliever. You have a chance to go out and get first of all, a top 50 prospect, which is huge. I think he might be listed outside the top 50 now, but still top 100. And a guy who might end up playing every day for you for 6 years. And I think that I really liked that trade. Honestly, that's definitely the best trade we made this offseason. And obviously Gore to the Rangers, and I believe you have more on that one.
Yeah. Gore to the Rangers is there's the trade in and of itself, right? In a vacuum, I think that the trade was good, even though the Rangers were not like the most likely trade partner, right? When because Gore was rumored to be traded, or being shopped for a while, right? Teams were calling since the deadline. Obviously, they didn't move him then. So, we kind of anticipated that, especially with the new regime coming to this offseason. But ultimately, they get, Gavin Fine, who's the most recent first round pick from the Rangers last year, high school shortstop, Alejandro Rosario, Devin Fitzgerald, Jeremy Cabrera, and I'm going to butcher this name, Abimelech Ortiz, all of which immediately ranked into the Nats top 25 prospects. They didn't get the Rangers top. Couldn't remember if it's top one or top two
I think
prospects,
it was
but
their number one guy. They couldn't quite get him.
so Fine was their number two. So maybe it was their
Yeah.
number three. I know there was like two guys that were heralded as like, oh, did the Rangers trade these guys? But anyways, I think the Nats still made out well. Fine, it has a lot of fans, and apparently the Red Sox were very, very high on Fine last year, right? Which explains why Taboni would be cool pulling the trigger on this move with Fine as the headliner, so to speak. Clearly, they're a lot higher on him than the consensus. And that's fine because the consensus is just kind of like the average. It doesn't necessarily mean that's where he will end up being, as we know. Guys come out of nowhere all the time and guys bust all the time. Like it's just the way it goes. So this is kind of one example of what I mentioned with Taboni bringing in his guys and the guys he likes, and a couple of those other guys are talked about as potentially being very fast risers. I believe it's Rosario, um, having I think he just had Tommy John surgery, but like, or maybe he's coming back from it. But his stuff plays. And one trade we didn't even mention, they traded Jake Bennett, who's a prospect earlier this offseason to the Red Sox. And the guy that got back, his name's escaping me right now. I'll pull it up here in a second. Another like hard throwing a fireballer. Geez, say that 5 times fast. But point being, like, Taboni's bringing in his guys, and that's a good thing. They're overhauling the system, so that's that in a vacuum. But it also is just very telling that Gore had 2 years of control left. CJ has 3 years of control left, and they're shopping them, which in my mind, those are two guys. They may not be superstars, but they're stars. They're star players in their respective roles. Those are guys you can clearly build around, and they're not. And it's not necessarily an indictment on the players. It's just saying, hey, I don't think this thing's going to get done in 3 years, right? So the guys that we have coming up, we have to have the timelines match, and they won't match in 3 years. So that's telling me this thing is going to be a longer process.
Yeah, and as for the Gore trade itself, like I feel like I kind of agree with. I think they did pretty well considering where his value had gotten to. Like we were begging them to trade him at the deadline last year because how good he was in the first half. And his value was at an all-time high with 2.5 years. So that would have been a playoff run for a team. We could have gotten a haul. Instead, they wait. He has a really not great second half, basically kills most of his trade value, and they still managed to get some top guys. I mean, no top 100 guys, but decent haul of guys, including a player that might end up cracking the roster if all things go right. But I'm pretty sure that the Nationals knew that this was kind of a timeline based thing, like you were saying, because there's no way this team's going to be ready to compete for a championship by the time 2 years has gone by. Maybe not even three, like you were saying with CJ. So I think the timeline they're probably looking at is the 2 years that James Wood is going to still be here before he hits free agency. I would think that's the right now, judging by their moves, that is kind of where they're thinking they might want to attack, and even then, we might not even be ready by then. So. Uh, yeah, it's gonna take a while, but the Gore trade pretty much had to happen. It's just kind of a bummer that it didn't happen earlier.
Yeah. But better late than never. They could have waited like what Rizzo would have done until the deadline before he was a free agent, and his
and gotten
value, even if he,
absolutely
yeah,
nothing.
even if he had been pitching well, his value would be tanked.
And I'm sure he'll do
Um,
great in Texas. I'm sure, I mean, he's a great pitcher. At the
I
end of the
love, yeah, I
day,
love Mackenzie Gore.
his
Yeah,
upside is kind of what fans look at more so than the results. Because realistically, he was a 4 ERA guy, but obviously we know he can be better than that with the right pieces around him, the right coaching. Maybe he could have been that guy with these new staff, but at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to find out. But obviously, good luck to him, and hopefully the trade pans out for both teams.
yeah. I think with Gore in particular, like we were evaluating him as a one, as an ace, right?
Hmm.
And he's still young, so I'm not saying he won't ever be that. But like with Texas, they don't need him to be an ace. They got DeGrom, they got Eovaldi, they got some other guys, that can obviously, they have Rocker and Leiter, who they're hoping develop into the studs as well. So like he's just gonna slot into the rotation. He could just pitch. He doesn't have to have, not that the Nats are ever in contention, but he doesn't have to carry the burden of being the ace. You can just go out there, and he has ace like stuff. So I'm still rooting for him for sure. But again, it's they're identifying what assets they do have on the major league roster, trading them for guys that might not be ready yet, but could be high impact guys down the road. Luis Perales is the guy they got for Jake Bennett from the
Yes,
Red Sox,
yes,
and
that's
his
right.
again another guy recovering from Tommy John. Um,
Stuff plays
so,
though.
so it's just like they have no problem waiting. They have no problem playing the waiting game. They're chasing upside, and that's good because some of these guys are going to hit, and they're going to hit in a big way. The hit rate's still going to be low because that's just how baseball works and prospect works. But like we're going to hit big on some of these guys because we're just being aggressive. You made a comment about like the waiver claims. They've been super aggressive. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's just my head canon. I truly believe Taboni has made more waiver claims just this offseason than Rizzo has made in the past like 5 years.
Yeah, there really haven't
Because
been that many.
they've claimed a guy and then, released him 3 days later because they claimed someone else. They've done that like a handful of times this offseason. So if
Hmm.
you count each individual transaction, it feels like they're just kind of, taking shots to turn over the bottom of the roster and try to get the best guys in here that they can. So they're being active. It's just, I think for me, it was a little surprising that they weren't active in a bigger way. And I'm not talking about like the Dylan Cease sweepstakes or, signing Framber Valdez, who's still out there as we're recording. Um, but, the
No, you
Reese,
got signed to the Tigers, bro.
oh, no, sorry, not sorry. Who's still, yeah, I completely forgot about that. That I swear there was one other one who just signed or still out there. Point being, maybe I'm thinking Max Scherzer because we were just talking about that as
Nah,
well.
dude, it's Reese Hoskins. What do you mean?
But yeah, I was, Reese Hoskins is not certainly a big name, but like he had a minor league deal with the Guardians. He just signed today. Um, that the fact that the Nats weren't even in on that, it was a little surprising, at least to me, that they weren't in on more major league talent that they could flip at the deadline. Because that's one thing, Rizzo didn't do a lot of, but he would still do, whether it was like Nelson Cruz or Josh Bell or whatever. Obviously, nothing. Jamer Candelario was the big success, right? So, Rizzo at least takes shots like that. And I was a little surprised that we didn't do that, but maybe it's just like, hey, we're going to let the kids play this year, get a real evaluation of where we're at under, seeing these kids play under our new coaching staff and new player development. And then we'll kind of reevaluate in 2026 or 2027.
Yeah, no, I think that the strategy is definitely to invest more into the technology in the minor league system right now. Honestly, doing sort of what, you know, the Tampa Bay Rays or teams similar to them, the Brewers are another team that does this, investing their money into technology in the minor league because although it is expensive for most of us in terms of buying players, one free agent signing can be your entire player development budget. So
Right.
like I think that they're definitely, you know, kind of trying to go through that way of making their team better before investing in free agency. That is the hope. Of course, with the learners, maybe they never invest in free agency and we're just stuck here forever. But at least they've shown some willingness to make changes here, and they have spend some money on the technology side of things. So that is at least a positive sign. So we're going to try and keep it positive in that sense until we have a reason not to, I guess. Um,
Right.
but yeah, realistically speaking, the most of the changes are happening on the staff and in the minor league rosters. Honestly, the team from last year is probably going to be the
It
mostly
looks
the same
pretty much
team
the same. Right.
coming off of the end of last season, besides Gore, obviously, and Ferrer being moved. Um, but there's definitely going to be most of the same guys. We're just hoping that this staff will be able to get more out of them. But yeah,
Right.
either way, we do have the projected lineup. Now, this is Fangraph's projected lineup that I'm about to say here, and this is wrong. It's just like straight up. Like this is not going to be the roster, but that was the resource I was using, so we're just gonna go ahead and say what they would have put the roster out as. But anyways, at DH, James Wood. At shortstop, CJ Abrams. Left field, Dalen Lyle. Right field, Dylan Cruz. First base, Luis Garcia Jr. Catcher, Keber Ruiz. Third base, Brady House. Second base, Nasim Nunez. And in center field, Jacob Young, with a bench consisting of catcher Drew Millis, first baseman Andres Chaparro, infielder Jose Tana, and outfielder Joey Weimer, who was another waiver claim that Taboni had made actually earlier, much
It
earlier
was
in
like
the
one of the first
offseason.
moves. Yeah,
Yeah.
Weimer, and then Foster Griffin, Miles Michaelis, were kind of like the air quotes in the biggest way possible, the big additions to the
Yeah,
team
exactly.
this year. Griff McGarry's, we'll talk about him here in a little bit when we
Yes.
get to the pitching side of things, but he was a Rule 5 selection. The Rule 5 pick, or at the time, was a highly anticipated event because we felt like the Nats were going to make a selection. Daniel Susak, the catcher from the Athletics, was like a highly linked name to the Nats, given our struggles at the catcher position. Um, Turns out Taboni had different plans, traded for Harry Ford to at the very least create competition behind Keibert Ruiz. They DFA'd Riley Adams. I mean, he's still with the organization, just not in the 40 man. Drew Millis will still be involved, but certainly introducing Harry Ford to this organization provides a lot of optimism for that position. But yeah, the lineup is certainly something. I would not expect this lineup to be
Yeah, we
out
have our
there.
own lineups, and I'm sure
Right.
that they're going to differ from Fangraphs.
So, you know, I think the place I want to start is the outfield. James Wood is, I think, best suited in left field.
Yes.
And I think he still has a ways to go. I know he was projected as like a right fielder and things like that. Especially given our roster, who else, with the other players we have out there, I don't see him playing right field almost ever. And I still think he needs to develop more as a left fielder as well. Um, Jacob Young is a really good fourth outfielder. I think the discourse around Jacob Young, and understandably so, has been so bastardized because of the previous regime just playing him like an everyday guy when
Mhm.
he's not that guy. But damn, he is a really really good defender, and he didn't have his best year on the bases last year, but I expect that to improve, be just based on more discipline and better coaching. But he is a really good fourth outfielder, but he should not be starting on an everyday basis. That should be Dylan Cruz, Dalen Lyle. I prefer Cruz in center, and then Dalen Lyle in right, with again Wood in left, and then Young spelling, Cruz, or if you want to put like every fourth game Young in center and Cruz to right and Lyle to left, whatever, Wood DH, like whatever you want to construct it, that's fine. But I think Cruz should be your center fielder going forward. So that was the big thing. Obviously, those are the young guys, right? Those three guys are kind of who you're hoping take the next step, as well as CJ, who's a different conversation here a little bit. But yeah, Wood needs to be playing in the field every day is my point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Fangraphs projection is mostly based on last year's defensive metrics, which weren't very kind to James Wood or Dalen Lyle. But at the end of the day, they have to be playing every day out there, or they're not going to get better. So we have to give them a chance. I think Lyle specifically has a chance to really improve because there's no doubt that he has the speed. Like he's one of the
Hmm.
fastest players on a team filled with speed. Like we have a lot of speed, and he's up there. His key issue was just getting the right read off the bat. And that can be tough
Seems
transition
like that was
from.
everybody's issue minus Young.
True, yeah, and honestly, that's probably tough for young players coming come from a totally different, like minor league parks and major league parks are totally different for the eye line. Like they're not seeing the same thing in major league, so it can take some guys a little bit longer to adjust to that and getting used to the lights and the third deck and everything like that. So obviously, we're gonna have to let them. They need to be playing the field, and yeah, Cruz and center should probably be every day. But yeah, and you also pointed out that there's going to be a rotation here, pretty much all over the field, not just in the outfield. The infield is going to go through the same thing. I'm assuming we're going to see a lot more platoon options, days where the lineup's different. I mean, lineup from what Butera has said, he's not sticking with an everyday lineup. He
I
wants
don't
to
think you
see how.
can. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he really can't, but he wants to base it on performance and also matchup. So we're probably going to see a lot more platooning, which I think is overall probably a good thing. Um, and obviously defensively, the positions are kind of up in the air. Like obviously Fangraphs is projecting Luis Garcia Jr. to be our first baseman. I don't think that he'll always be playing first base, but could I see him swap over there for a game or two? Yeah, I could. So I think there's definitely going to be a lot of the entire roster is going to be used. Like there's not really going to be a guy on the bench that doesn't get in the games. They're gonna see action. Every guy is gonna get in, just to for matchups sake, and also just to maybe spell a guy who's going through a rough patch, help his mental by just getting him out of there. Because I remember we saw a stretch from James Wood post All-Star break where he played every day for 2 months and just he was just terrible. Like he
Hmm.
could not, he struck out 40% of the time. I feel like
Yeah, this team in the
they
second
have
half is
they
just awful.
eventually like gave him a couple days, but I feel like maybe you could do that a little bit earlier and just kind of help keep him out of that mental rut because it took him a while to get back to even just hitting at an average level. But yeah, just stuff like that. The whole roster is going to be used for sure. And AAA is basically they're just going to be feeding
It's like an
players back
extension.
and forth. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of going to be like that. So we really can't project anything because of that, but we can do our best.
Yeah. I also think, and listen, we're recording at the end of February. We still have basically a month of spring training. We don't know what the roster's going to look like. We're just kind of again projecting. I also think it makes the Joey Weimer claim take a shot. Yeah, that's fine, but it would be odd to me to keep five outfielders. Um,
Yeah, I agree.
Especially given that three of them are guys that should be in the lineup, whether it's DH or in the field every day, right? And then a very very good defensive fourth outfielder in Jacob Young. So if Weimer hits, great. That's kind of what his calling card was. As a prospect, a highly touted prospect, just hasn't panned out. But I don't see much that's like the one position, and it's like the last position on the bench, so it's not that big of a deal. But it's the one position where I'm like, I don't see an immediate use for, right? Chaparro can play first. Garcia moved to second. Nunez down, right? That makes sense. Same thing with Tenna. Tenna can spell house, spell whoever's playing second base, right? Like those guys will naturally get in. But Weimer's the one where it's just like, I guess you could force it, but then you're sitting Lyle, you're sitting Wood, and occasionally it's fine, but you also have Jacob Young to like sit. So yeah, anyways, it is a little bit odd right now. Again, things could definitely change, but I think we have to talk a little bit about Luis Garcia at first. It was something that was flirted with last year, but it seems like that's what they're gonna roll with. And the way the roster's shaking out kind of seems like that's what it is going to be.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up there. over the course of the season. It would surprise me a little bit if he started like opening day at first base just because he has so little
I
experience.
mean, it's
But
him or Chaparro at this point.
I mean, honestly, it's him and there's like five options that it could be just because
I
there
guess
is
that's fair.
no straight up like there's no guarantee
The
there.
roster's
So
not the roster yet. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but he'll I think he'll play a little bit of both throughout the course of the season. And it'll just depend if the bat plays. If the bat plays, he can play first. If his bat is kind of where it was last year, he's really not valuable at first. Even playing a poor second base would be better than playing first base with his total numbers, even though the metrics look pretty good for him last year. But yeah, it's just going to be tough because obviously with first base, the defensive penalty is so massive. Like you have to hit.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of tough. There's not really a 100% option there.
I guess
Um,
he's, of all the, at least, I guess, younger options, like the guys that could fill that role for beyond just 1 year, right? He's the best profile, right?
that we have currently, yeah, I will have
Yeah,
to agree
right,
with that.
right. So it's just, I guess, we'll give him a shot and see. They definitely added a couple of flyers at first base. Matt Mervis, uh, the best name in baseball, warming Bernabel. Yeah, and then the Handy Morales is a prospect drafted in the second round out of Miami a couple years ago. He's steadily improving. I don't know that he'll be ready this year. And then Albamelec Ortiz, who they got from the Mackenzie Gore trade, could be someone that mid-season we're seeing a nice jump, and he could be a September call up or something like that. But yeah, first base, in and of itself will kind of be like a revolving door, just because it seems like a lot of guys are going to get different shots there.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a platoon, whoever it ends up being. I would think it's going to be a platoon there, just because you know that these guys' bats probably aren't there by themselves, and they might have to recreate in the aggregate. Shout out Moneyball. But
Right.
yeah, as for the rotation, though, the current Fangraphs projection says that Cade Cavalli is going to be our number one, which I kind of agree with. Brad Lord will also join him in the rotation, along with Josiah Gray returning after basically two full seasons missed.
Mm-hmm.
And then you mentioned the signing of Foster Griffin out of the NPB. He actually made his major league debut for the Royals a few years back, went over to the NPB, improved drastically, and now he's back for a 1 year deal and an opportunity. Definitely, he's probably going to make the rotation. I think he makes the most money of like most players on
Yeah.
our team. So, which
Mm-hmm.
is not saying much, but he does. And then the recent signing of Miles Michaelis probably rounds out that five. Although he hasn't been good, he can throw innings. So that's probably what he's going to be tasked with doing. And then we have the bullpen, the current projected bullpen, which is Clayton Beeter, Cole Henry, PJ Poulin, Julian Fernandez, who I believe was a waiver claim from the Dodgers, Jackson Rutledge, Richard Dick Lovelady, Gus Varland, and Griff McGarry, who was the Rule 5 pick, our most recent Rule 5 pick. That is how Fangraphs projects our current rotation and bullpen. Any guy that really jumps out to you on either the rotation or bullpen there?
um, yeah, a couple. I mean, the bullpen, like I just don't think there's much to talk about, right? Aside
That
from
will almost certainly not be what the bullpen will end
right,
up being.
aside from the great name and Dick Lovelady,
Of course.
just fantastic name. Um, yeah, but to your point, it's going to be crazy how different the bullpen is opening day versus midseason versus the end of the season. But good for them just taking shots, right? Seeing what sticks. The rotation's interesting for two reasons. Signing Michaelis, I get wanting a veteran in there, makes sense. Michaelis eats innings. Okay. I think of all the spots on the roster, you could have signed the guy I really wanted was Tyler Maley, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Because he had, like, I think he made 14 starts for Texas last year, had a great season, but just has dealt with injury issues. Like, he would have been a veteran that you possibly could have flipped halfway through and then opened up a spot for a DJ Hurds or someone who isn't ready yet, but will come back and be ready, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I get the idea of wanting to eat innings, but you also have a little bit you have options to eat innings because one guy that's not in here is Jake Irvin.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to say like Jake Irvin needs to be a mainstay and the Jake Irvin disrespected, da, 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 but he's proven to be able to eat innings, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of like one thing he can do. So it is interesting that they presumably like nudged him out unless they're envisioning a bullpen role for him or one of these other guys. Like I know Brad Lord has kind of done both, but Brad Lord pitched really well as a starter last year. It would be hard for me to envision Lord going back to the bullpen, but I guess he could. Right. So it's just Cavalli, that's the guy you're counting on to develop. We'll see if Brad Lord can maintain his ability to be like just a good starter, right? A good MLB pitcher. Maybe not all-star level, but just a good pitcher. Josiah Gray, I really like, but I think there's a lot of deficiencies in his game, and also he's coming back from injury. So we'll see. Foster Griffin is an unknown. You're taking a shot. Nothing wrong with that. Um, it is an interesting rotation. This is the one area I expected them to do something a little bit more, even if it was just kind of taking a shot on a guy that could have been a trade, and if he wasn't good, you would just release him. Maybe that is Michaelis, but I'd be hard pressed to see anyone giving up anything of substance for a 37-year-old Miles Michaelis.
Hey, you never know. Don't forget about John
Lane
Lester.
Thomas.
Lane
Oh my
Thomas, the late
god.
trade day.
Yeah, I know.
I'm so sorry. Uh, yeah, I mean, I think the point is we definitely needed like a 1 year deal type of guy, but
Right.
was Michaelis the guy we wanted? Probably not. As fans, obviously the team has decided he was who they wanted. There's also the thing, we can talk about hypotheticals about pitching signings or hitting signings. At the end of the day, they have to want to come here too, which right
Fair.
now is probably not the time that you would want to be a Washington National in terms of winning. So there's also that side, but
Some guys just want a shot to start, a shot to
yeah,
prove it. So
that's the Foster Griffin signing right there.
I
He
guess that's true.
probably could have signed with a better team, but would he have a chance to start? Probably not. He definitely has an opportunity here. I also think Irvin will end up starting in the rotation. Whether he sticks there will obviously depend on how good he pitches, but he's been here for a while now. I think he'll at least get the benefit of the doubt to
Almost an all-star, what, 2 years ago? Or was that last
that
year?
was yeah, no, I think 2 years ago he did have a big first half. I remember that July 4th
I
game against
also
the
think he was
Nets.
probably snubbed. Like the Nats were just so bad.
That's yeah, if we were winning, he probably would have
Yeah.
made it. Obviously, he didn't maintain that level throughout
No.
that season, but he still had a decent year. Obviously, last year was a big step backwards. So we're hoping that some of the new technology and the new coaching staff can maybe help him just figure out what the problem was. A big issue I remember last year was just that his velo dipped and his
Hmm.
fastball became way more hittable because that fastball was a weapon for him the year before, and it really wasn't last year. Still has a nice curveball, can still throw it for strikes early in counts. That's going to be big for him this year to continue to do that. But hopefully they can find something with him and make one little tweak or something, and maybe you unlock a guy. So I would anticipate he ends up in the rotation to start the season at least.
Yeah. This is like the one aside from like the obvious points like James Wood, CJ Abrams, things like that. But I think that the top three in the rotation as projected is like the one area where like my homerism comes out. Cause like I don't hate Cavalli, Lord, and Gray. I know I'm just a fan of Josiah Gray. Like and I understand, people are lower on him. But I've seen flashes and rooting for the guy. But like point being, I think that with better coaching, which we obviously have now, and obviously, Driveline and the new wave of analytics and how, they're doing things now. I'm getting like antsy to see the jumps that some of these guys make.
Yeah, I think that excitement is totally fair because I feel it too. But I will say, at the end of the day, we still have to. If they don't pan, if they don't have a great month of April, we can't freak out. Like that's
Now,
kind of that's kind of where we have to be. Like,
everybody has a long leash now.
yeah, and so maybe when we get like halfway through the year, we can start to look at results and stuff. But we really have to keep it with process-based stuff first. But yeah, I think Cavalli's performance at the end of last year. I mean, even his ERA, I believe, went over 4, but the metrics really liked him.
Hmm.
He did a great job of forcing ground balls, which I wasn't really.
It's
I
not
didn't know
his
he could
game
do that, but
necessarily.
like
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense with the way he was throwing his curveball last year. Guys just chased it, and when they chase low, they get that weak contact on the ground. So if that's a weapon for him, that's great. His big thing was when he threw 97 plus last year, he was untouchable nearly. Like the WOBA numbers are crazy. When his velo dipped later in games, he wasn't able to go very long in games, which makes sense. Obviously he's been injured a lot anyways, but you could see the velo dip, and that's when he started to get hit. So the key is going to be, maintaining velocity for a little bit longer. He's also, I've heard, added a sweeper to his arsenal, which with the way he can spin his curveball seems to make sense to me. To just add a little bit of horizontal, give a different look to some of those guys. He has the potential to be a number one for us, not like an ace on a normal staff, but like, can he be a guy that you look at and say, hey, we have a chance to win with this guy on the mound? Yeah, I do think so. Lord is interesting because he's so versatile. He was so good in the swingman role last year, and obviously we kind of have more what we think more forward-thinking organization. Well, they want to put him in that role again because that is such an important role, and he did such a good job last year. So I think Lord has a potential to start in the bullpen and be that swing man. Um, but he's going to obviously make the team. He was
Yeah.
pretty important last year.
No
Um,
more working at Home Depot for Brad Lord.
no more Home Depot for Brad Lord. Um, and then obviously Gray as the third there. We just don't know what he's going to look like. It's just been so long since he's pitched. Is he ready to go? Do they want to hold him maybe a little bit back just to make sure 100% he's ready? I don't know, but um, obviously his last full season for the Nats was a pretty solid season. The
Hmm.
underlying metrics weren't great, but his results wise, he finished with a sub 4 ERA and almost 160 innings. I believe that was his All-Star season as well, although
It
that was
was.
more of the you
They had to
have to
pick
have an
somebody.
all-star type
Yeah.
all-star. I don't know if he
Hey,
necessarily would have made it,
all star
but he did
nevertheless.
have a really good first half that year. Um, and a quick little tangent about Greg because I've been looking at the stats recently, and he just has the weirdest breaking ball. It is so strange. It moves backwards, and I was looking at it up, and I mean, obviously, you know that if a guy has a high release angle, his curveball is probably going to be more of a 12 to 6. And sometimes when they come straight over the top like that, it can actually spin and move the opposite direction that it's supposed to. But Gray's arm angle is not like those. Like a Tyler Glasnow, for example, was the most pronounced version of that 12-6 action that would actually break a wrong way, but Gray's arm angle is way closer to 3/4 than any other guy that had a pitch like that. And I just thought that was so interesting. It's probably has something to do with his mechanics. He has kind of weird mechanics. He lands on
No
his heel,
extension. Yeah.
no extension. That's definitely something. Yeah, oh yeah, actually speaking of extension, Jake Irvin is like the complete opposite. He gets great extension, so
Hmm.
hopefully they can figure out a way to maximize that with him. But it was just such an interesting little comparison because every other guy that threw a curveball like that had a much more over the top pronounced arm angle than Gray. And maybe that's why it works so well against lefties, is because it just moves in a way guys are not expecting. So very interested to see, first of all, just his what his arsenal looks like in general, because he was throwing 7 pitches, and me and you have discussed that we definitely want to see him kind of condense that, because he's not really a command guy. If you're a command
Yeah.
guy, you can get away with throwing a lot of pitches like that, but he's not really like that. So, simplify the arsenal perhaps and get more out of those pitches. But yeah, he's definitely the most intriguing player right now, just because I'm just really excited to
What
see
are we gonna get?
what he does. Yeah, I just don't
Right.
know what he's going to look like.
Yeah.
Um,
To
so
your
yeah.
point about like command guys, right? I think, you know, it's easy. I have a granted not, professional, but like I have a baseball coach background. Like it's easy as a coach to be like, all right, we're going to play good defense. We're going to throw strikes. We're not going to walk guys, like things like that. But it truly seems like the Nats belief is like that's what they want to do to win ball games. Like, because the two guys they brought in, despite not being world beaters, like they throw strikes. They don't walk guys.
Hmm.
They eat innings, right? So that could be something that they're looking to prioritize. And then in the bullpen and other areas, that's where they're trying to take swings at upside. The younger guys that they can develop into more strike throwers, right? But as of right now, they're prioritizing, no walks, outs on the ground, things like that. So we'll just kind of see how it all unfolds, what
Yeah,
this new pitching staff, or sorry, pitching coaching staff is going to work on with these pitchers and what they will prioritize.
you can definitely see the difference in the rotation and bullpen philosophies because the bullpen is just like stuff
Yeah.
for the most part. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Clayton Beater was such a funny guy
11
last
7
year.
2 K per nine.
Yeah, and then he'll walk the bases loaded, but he won't give up a hit. It's like so the stuff is there. Like his
Welcome back,
his
Rafael Soriano.
yeah, oh yeah, we're t totally in for that. Whoever our next closer ends up being, because yeah, him and then obviously the Rule 5 pick, Griff McGarry is a guy that can get it up there to 100, but he just doesn't quite know where it's gonna go. So hopefully, and you don't necessarily have to know exactly where it's going as a reliever, right? Now, not anymore nowadays. You just have to kind of
Get it
you just
close.
can't walk everybody.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
basically it. Like you have to have enough command not to walk like 8 batters per 9 innings.
Right.
And then you can sort of get away with a couple walks here and there because your stuff's really good.
I mean,
Um,
I imagine it's going to be a committee to close games, and
oh yeah,
certainly
we don't have a closer right now
right, and
for
certainly
sure.
the Nationals won't be in position to win many games and be in many safe situations. But it will be interesting to see who emerges, because it's just how bullpens work. One guy tends to emerge, and it doesn't have to be like the most obvious candidate ever. You look at saves across the MLB every season, and there's always like a handful of random names. Like
Yeah, guy just
the
has a good year, good couple months,
right,
and he's the guy that for that team.
exactly, like the idea of like the shutdown closer, is almost gone, in many respects. Like,
Yeah, especially when they get caught gambling.
well, yes, that is very, very, very true. Right. It's more of an outlier now than, I think for a time everyone was chasing that shutdown closer. And now it's just kind of like teams are fine using committees, right? They almost treat the ninth inning as just any other inning. Let's play the matchup with who's coming up. Right. That's why you hear some teams be like, well, the most important inning might be the seventh inning. So we're going to use our, best reliever there. Right.
Hmm.
So, I fully expect that's what the Nationals will do, and they're going to play matchups even in the ninth inning. But just for me personally, it will be interesting to see, like, just playing the odds. One of these guys is going to hit, at least for this year, and who's that going to be? Because like I think the odds are pretty much even across the board right
Yeah, he
now.
could not. I mean, the thing, I guess I would pick Beater as of now, just
Stuff
as
wise,
like
yeah.
stuff like because
If you can limit the walks
man,
even a little bit, yeah.
he has a wipeout slider. That is, I mean, it's listed as a slider, but it moves like a curveball. It's pretty crazy. His fastball's not bad either. He can get it up to 99. Um, but yeah, no, that's just yeah, like you're saying, it's kind of philosophy around the league. Like if you have a stud closer, that's great. Like if you have an Edwin Diaz on your team that can just kind of walk out there in the ninth and you know it's going to be 1, 2, 3 pretty much every night. But those guys are rare, and teams are not trying to force a guy into that role if he can't do it. Like they're much more like it used to be every team had a guy in the seventh inning, and every team had a guy in the eighth inning, and every team had a guy in the ninth inning, but not every team was good. So some of those seventh, eighth, ninth inning guys weren't good at that role. So it's kind of just an interesting philosophy change with the way rosters are being built around the league. And the Nationals are finally stepping into the 21st century in that regard.
Yep, yep. So the one thing, we haven't really touched on that we probably should, because while I don't think it's imminent yet, just knowing, one, it's a new regime, two, there have been talks, and three, teams get desperate, right? CJ Abrams. Um, I think that CJ is a polarizing player. I think it's not hard to see the talent and project on it a little, but there's certainly certain aspects to his game. Defensively, the second half slumps, things like that that give you pause on just how high his ceiling is, or maybe just how low his floor is, things like that. Um, it seems like the Nats are at the very least doing their due diligence, right? They're shopping CJ. Shopping might not even be the right word, but they're at least listening, seeing what the offers are. It seems like the Giants got really close, but it just wasn't enough for the Nats liking. So at least as of right now, they're keeping CJ. I think all of that's fine. All of that's smart. It's not an indictment on CJ. It's like we said earlier, CJ's timeline just might not match up with how the new regime views the Nationals timeline as a whole, right? So if you're going to trade him in 2 years from now, why not trade him now and see if you can get even more, right? Um, I want to get your thoughts because at least as of right now, they're saying all the right things on press conferences. They're saying CJ's our guy. They're not trying to sweep it under the rug that they haven't had talks, which I also appreciate. They're being very upfront, as at least as upfront as they can be. But what do you think about the CJ Abrams situation?
I think it's unfortunate. Yeah, it's just kind of an unfortunate symptom of where we're at right now. Because I
Mm-hmm.
love CJ, and I think he's a guy that can be kind of, sort of in that 2 to 4 WAR range for you every year, which you need guys like that. His
It's a
ceiling
good
is much
player,
higher
yeah.
than that, but
Mm-hmm.
like right now, that's kind of where he's at, and he's only 25, so he's still not even in his prime yet, athletic prime. So this is already what he can do. It's just the inconsistencies that make it hard to want to like drop him an extension, basically. Because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it's either you extend him or you trade him. You cannot let him, and you got to trade him relatively soon. I mean, by next offseason, probably would be the latest that you'd want to wait. Um, and then even then, you might not have his highest trade value because currently, right now, he doesn't because of his second half slumps. That's kind of his big issue with trade value wise. Like even if he has a big first half, and you're like, okay, he has value, we can trade him. You still might not get as much as you want because teams kind of know for the past 3 years. I mean, it's been consistent in the second half. He has not been the same hitter. Um, and then defensively, obviously, he's not up to par. I think that is the key for me with CJ in determining whether or not I want to trade him or if I wanted to extend him is getting his defense to, and he doesn't even have to be great. He's a good enough hitter and a good enough base runner that if he's just an average defender at shortstop, he is extremely valuable. He's probably pushing 4.5, 5 F WAR at that point if he's just not the literal one of the worst defenders in the sport, which he was last year. And when he's the key for CJ is just identifying when to be aggressive at the plate. I love that his aggressiveness when it's working. But
Right.
sometimes, you're not going to get a first pitch strike. You're not going to get a strike at all if you keep swinging at stuff at your ankles, which he gets into swing mode where it just seems like he's kind of an auto swing. Like and that's a lot of our players from this past few years where we just don't have a consistent approach for any guy, really. So that's going to be up and down the roster, but especially CJ is a prime example of a guy who, if his approach was a little bit better, he could be an even better hitter, and he's a good hitter for a shortstop. Like you have a 107 WRC plus as a shortstop, that's really good. Um, but we just know that he can reach another level. We know that it's there if he can get it, put it all together for one full season. But then it's really sucks because you're like, okay, now we have to either trade him or we have to extend him, and it's gonna suck if we end up trading him after that because we're gonna be like, damn, he was really good, another good player gone. But it's just kind of a symptom of where we are. So it's gonna be interesting. I definitely if he has a big first half, I mean, he's going to be at least in talks again. He might still be in talks right now. I mean, he could be gone by the time we do our next episode.
Right.
You never know. But obviously, I don't mind keeping him right now. Obviously, if he has a good year and he's consistent all the way through, I don't even mind trying to drop an extension to him. I don't know if he'd go for it, but um, he's at least if he can at least get his defense to a decent spot, his floor just goes way up as a player because his base running is elite and he's a good hitter. Even with his flaws at the plate, he's still a good hitter. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting year for CJ. And one thing I did hear is that he's very like you said, the organization's being pretty transparent about the fact that they were, willing to trade him if the package was right. And CJ is aware that that happened. And he's been through this before, right? He
Mhm.
got traded from the Padres. He's probably at this point he's like, you know what? Nothing I can do about it. I just got to get out there and do what I can do every day, and that's the key. So we're gonna be, I'm sure, bringing this back up until either a trade happens or an extension happens, I guess.
Yeah, I think the other part of that equation, which I'm sure is maybe not the primary reason that Taboni and company are exploring moving CJ, but at the very least, like a loud voice in the back of their mind. They have a lot of shortstop, like a lot of their top prospects, right? If you look at the top 25, a lot of them are shortstops, and that's not uncommon. Guys move positions all the time, second base, center field, third base, like etc. So I'm not saying all of them are going to end up as MLB shortstops, but given CJ's issues defensively, and again, I mentioned this regime's seeming prioritization into fundamentals and defense and whatnot. It's like maybe a guy like Seaver King does bounce back, right? Because if you look at him he played at Wake Forest. It's not like he played at this like small D2 school and it was a lot of projection with him and like maybe he can do this. Like he balled out at Wake Forest, like one of like a premier collegiate baseball program and in the Cape League. Um, so it's not, I'm not saying he's going to have a massive year or anything like that and be the opening day shortstop or anything like that. It's just maybe he does bounce back and then if Garcia slides to first, CJ slides to second, Seaver like something,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
didn't even mention the fact that he could move over to second base, but that's definitely a
right.
possibility, especially with second base and first base being kind of up in the air right now.
Right. So I bring up that because Eli Willits is still years away, but he's a shortstop. They traded for Gavin Fine. He's a shortstop. They have a couple of other, highly athletic middle infield candidates and things like that. So they're clearly evaluating everything. But if you look at CJ, you're holding on to his offensive profile, not his defensive profile. So it's, you know, offense is good or offense is great. Like you have to be able to hit to really stick in the major leagues. Um, but I do think they're going to want a just a better shortstop, just a better shortstop. And that's nothing against CJ, but they're going to want a guy that they can put out there who can make the routine plays and sometimes make the spectacular plays and things like that. Whereas CJ will botch a routine play. I love him, but he will botch a routine play, right? So I think that is part of it too. Like, they're bringing in their guys. It's nothing against CJ, but is CJ truly a guy they would normally go after? I don't know. Too early to say, but I think that is at least part of the discussion.
Side note, remember when Luis Garcia Jr. was the shortstop that one season?
It's funny because I had forgotten about that until we talked about him moving to first base just like what 20 minutes ago or
The
whatever it was.
Nationals' defense at shortstop over the past,
Has been awful.
like over this decade.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure people probably forgot, but Alcides Escobar was our freaking
Yeah.
shortstop in like 2021.
Michael Franco at third.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So not great infield defense. That definitely
Yeah.
hasn't helped our pitching staff at all, although the staffs that we've had haven't been great anyways.
No.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think everything you touched on there is true. And yeah, I didn't even remember to say, but yeah, he could totally end up moving to second base at some point.
But I also
Not
think that's like in terms of trades, like if you're again in take away names from the conversation and to an extent like some stats like if you're trading for a shortstop in theory, it's going to cost you more than trading for a second baseman.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. So I think that's where the disconnect is because right now CJ's a shortstop. Like you mentioned, he's young. He can still develop into a good shortstop. It's just right now he's not, at least
Yeah,
defensively.
he's gonna start this year as a shortstop.
Right. So it's like
We'll see where it goes from there,
The
but
Nationals correctly view him as a shortstop and value him as a shortstop, whereas teams attempting to trade for him, because he has plenty of interest. There's plenty of teams that would want CJ Abrams on their team, but they might value him as a second baseman. So that's where I think some of the discrepancy is as well. So, we could see two things. I mean, we could see many things, but two things we could see. CJ improves defensively at shortstop enough to where teams look past the defensive woes, right? Or the change to second base happens at some point if another worthy shortstop candidate emerges on the Nats. And then we get to see CJ at second base, and that it kind of matches what the rest of the league sees CJ as, and a trade facilitates then.
yeah, that's a great point actually, about how other teams see him versus how we see him. Because obviously the Nationals, whether they really believe it that he's going to end up projecting as a future shortstop or not, they have to say, hey, this is a shortstop. That's his value. He's our shortstop.
Mm-hmm.
And other teams might be looking at him as second base value. So it's kind of probably in that case, it makes even more sense for them not to move him quite yet, just because you want to build that shortstop value back up around the league, not just within your organization.
Right. So we'll see. I think that's. I don't. If I had to place a bet down, shout out Emmanuel Clase. I would bet he's not going to get moved for the first couple months of the season. I think the deadline's the first time we will really hear that any potential for that talk again. And even then, I think it's hard for teams to make massive swings anymore mid-season. Unless you're like the Dodgers who are just playing a completely different game. Um, but it's definitely more of an off-season thing when you can kind of let trades develop and you have a wider market, not just the teams that are in contention that year. But I think when you're already almost to March, you might as well just see how it plays out. So that's kind of my bet with CJ, but it will be something to monitor, and certainly we're rooting for him as well. I would love to see him stick around. Maybe he emerges as a guy that they do want to extend for that, 7 year, 150 million. Maybe I don't know if that's too much. It depends how he plays, obviously, but you know what I mean, like that early extension before he first hits free agency, things like
Hmm.
that. So
Yeah, I think one last thing about CJ. Um, you know, it's a good problem to have if he has a
sure.
consistently good year this year.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of a sudden, then you have an extremely valuable asset if you want to trade him, or a guy that you feel like with this new regime really excelled and that you can extend him safely, and it feels like you're not going to have a huge downside. There obviously is always going to be risk with extensions like that, but there's also not even to mention the fact that it could be a completely new free agency system after this next CBA, which
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll be getting into throughout the season. It could be a totally different outlook on free agency and what guys want to do.
we could
So
just like not have baseball anymore.
that's also technically possible. So
So
I hate that one, but that is
yeah,
technically an option.
we'll see. So before we, get into any projections for the lineups and seasons and things like that, is there anyone else that you wanted to talk about on, the 40 man or non-roster invite, any other prospects that, have stood out one way or another?
Yeah, one guy that really interests me is Christian Franklin,
Okay.
who we got back in from the Cubs for what's his name? He
The
started
pitcher, Soroka, right?
Soroka, yeah, Michael
Mhm.
Soroka. So Franklin is intriguing to me because he's not necessarily obviously being an outfielder kind of sucks for him in this organization because
Yeah.
there's so many, but just in terms of the bat, he's hit at every level. He's an on-base machine. He walks like 14% of the time in his minor league career. Uh, and there's no clear answer for a DH. I think right now I mean, it's going to be a rotation of guys, but I think right now it's probably K. Ruiz. as weird as that is to say, just because he basically has to be on the roster in some form, unless they, want to do the nuclear option and just cut him, but they won't. So because of that, Franklin's kind of intriguing to me as a guy, not for the opening day roster, but someone that we might see, come up at some point if he's really hitting. Just because, I mean, the man gets on base. I know I already referenced Moneyball earlier in this, but there it is. It's pretty simple. Nationals don't have like we were talking about approach wise, the Nats aren't a big walk rate team. I mean,
Hmm.
it's pretty much James Wood, and that's pretty much it in terms of guys who walk a lot. So, he's probably the most interesting guy to me out of that list that we have here in terms of position players. In terms of the pitchers, there's definitely some guys. Some non-roster invites that intrigue me. The most intriguing to me was probably Drew Smith, because I think he has a very good chance of making the roster if he's healthy. Um, and he's a veteran. I mean, he's not really a veteran guy, but he is on this team because he has major league experience and he was pitching very, very well before he got injured. And, nowadays it doesn't always happen like this, but it seems to be the case where a guy comes off of Tommy John, he has like a window of time where he's fully effective before it kind of, breaks down again. So we're kind of hoping for that with Drew Smith because he does have really good stuff. Former Met. So out of those pitchers, I think he's the most intriguing for me. Obviously, Susanna and Sikora, in terms of our prospects, are very interesting, but they're currently dealing with injuries, so they're probably not going to be ready
Right.
for the first game of the season.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of jumped the gun and, I guess tipped my hand a little bit. But Seaver King's someone that is stuck in the back of my mind. And it may not be in the first half of the year, and certainly depends what goes on with CJ Abrams. Because if CJ looks good at shortstop, they're not going to bring up Seaver King just because, right, and displace CJ. But he is someone that I think it's relatively easy to see him improve from, like, his stats last year were not great, overall. But if you had seen, or for those that have seen, I think it's going around Twitter now. Um, Keith Law, love him or hate him, he's been doing this a long time. He released his top 100 prospects, and he actually had Seaver King as a top 100 prospect, which I don't think there's any other
Yeah, that's
publication that has him as a
it's a,
top 100
it's a
prospect.
little bit insane, but I get it. Yeah.
Sure, right, but I think it's of note because the write-up basically says that the Nats minor league organization was really trying to get King to pull the ball in the air, which is a fine approach for some people. I think like Isaac Paredes. I don't even, where
Oh,
is he with the Astros now? I can't even remember.
well, he
Cubs.
was, and then he went to the Cubs. I think he
Oh,
might still
he's
be with
Cubs.
Chicago.
Okay, so yeah.
Actually, I don't know, but yeah,
But
extreme pull
anyways,
side hitter.
right, and I bring up that name specifically because of the Rays background and things like that, with Butera. But it's a strategy, but Seaver King's not that profile, right? Like, he
Yeah.
hit 411 in I can't remember if it was the Cape or college, but like as an amateur he hit 411 in the season, right? And he's uber athletic. Like, there was talks he can play center field, but it seems like he's going to stick at shortstop. And he's showing to be a plus defender. He's swiping 30 bags in a season and has potential to be even more than that. So I just bring him up because, largely because of the CJ thing. Like, if it's not CJ, we're gonna need a shortstop. Like, we can get by with Nasim Nunez for a little bit, but I also don't think Nasim Nunez is going to end up hitting enough. He was better last year than the year prior, but I just don't see him hitting enough. So it's like, you might as well take a shot on Seaver King, and in the interest of seeing what you have in certain guys, I think Seaver King falls into that category and would be certainly a defensive upgrade almost immediately over what you have in CJ right now. So that's one that's interesting to me, because if they get him back to what he does really well, just hitting the ball over the park, and when he went to the um, Arizona Fall League, like, his numbers were way better
Yeah, he
as
did have a
opposed to.
really good stint at the fall league.
So it's like, again, I just don't think it's that difficult to see him, starting in Double A, playing really well, getting the call to AAA fairly early in the season, and then it's just a matter of time in some respects. So that's one that sticks out to me. But as far as the pitchers, you know, it's because pick your poison. Like, it it's just the flavor of the month
Yeah, there's a
as
ton
far
of
as
options.
who's in the bullpen, who's in the rotation, things like that. You mentioned Susana and Sikra, like those are the guys, but they're still a ways out. And then you add in Paredes and um, God, I'm blanking on names. The guy we got from the Rangers, Rosario, I think his name. But anyway, it's like, the high upside arms are still a ways out. Is my point. So, I think, you know, is is Alvarez like someone that's going to stick around? Like he had a couple of okay starts at the end of the year last year. You mentioned Drew Smith. That was, I think, the most recent one. So it'll just be interesting to see. But you know, I think it is going to be a lot of different. Like the 26-man roster is going to be the same way they're churning with waiver claims. The 24th, 25th, 26th men on the roster are going to be very, very
Yeah,
different week
it'll
to
be
week,
a
month to month.
cycle for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
And then I just do want to point out there, I don't think he's going to like fetch anything crazy back in a trade, but like Robert Hassel III is still in there as well. Like a young guy, had some flashes last year, can play center field, seems to be on the outside looking in, especially with Joey Weimer. That's just one that's interesting because, he can hit a little bit. So, just never know. But we do have a lot of outfielders. So,
Yeah, it's just a log jam there.
yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. But I mean, that's pretty much it. It's just, it's going to be a very telling spring training. I know, just spring training as a whole, you try different things and see what sticks and see what you ultimately feel most comfortable moving forward with. But it does feel like a very, very open competition overall. And I think that's a good thing. It's certainly something that's needed. Um, but what do you think ultimately ends up being the let's just call it opening day lineup? Like, what would your shot be?
Well, I do have a lineup.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, like we've been saying, it's going to be a full-blown rotation. Like this is not going to stick. But if I had to, this is kind of a logic-based but also fun-based lineup a little bit. So
Okay.
I'm going, obviously we got the top of our order is pretty much going to be the same as it was last year with CJ, James Wood, and Dalen Lyle, who, by the way, we didn't really talk about Lyle, but oh my goodness
Yeah.
gracious, what a second half he had. And he's probably the best pure hitter in terms of just hit the contact aspect, and just hitting the line drive. Like if I think he was like one basically the best besides Luis Ariz last year at hitting line drives. And he still has a good amount of pops. You don't run into that issue that Luis Ariz has where he has to hit 350 to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the fourth spot, I've got Luis Garcia Jr. playing second base to start. We'll see if he sticks there. And then my fun pick at first base, because there's really no like set option, is Abby Ortiz, who was returned from the Gore trade, and who is another guy that is hit at every level in the minors and probably is ready for a shot. And maybe like Nick was saying, halfway through the year, but I just went ahead and threw him in there for fun.
Sure. Why not?
And then at DH, obviously, we mentioned Ruiz might get that slot, but it's probably going to be a rotation of guys. The dream is that maybe taking him out of the catching role more often and just focusing on the bat actually works. Although I don't really have much hope left for Ruiz at this point.
Unfortunately, no.
In the seventh spot at center field, I have Dylan Cruz, and the eighth spot, third base, Brady House, and at the ninth spot, catcher Harry Ford, who you kind of convinced me that he has a better chance of starting opening day than I even realized. But with Adams not on the 40 man anymore, his basic competition, I mean, his competition is Ruiz. I mean, Millis had a good run last year when he played, but he projects more as a backup anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think Ford does have a pretty strong chance of taking that spot. Um, Ruiz must be on the roster here because he's on an extension and it's very unlikely that they would cut him. So that's why he's getting that spot. Otherwise, if I had the opportunity to just leave him off, I probably would. But that's kind of where my lineup is.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned our conversation that we had. Like, I do believe Harry Ford's going to be on the opening day roster. One, I think he's close, right? Even if he's not like ready right now or at the end of spring training, like you can afford him the leash to learn on the job
I mean,
a little bit.
his minor league numbers are crazy.
Stupid. So
Like
stupid.
like
Yeah.
400 on base percentage as a
Right.
catcher is
Right.
silliness.
So it's like, I do think his competition is Ruiz because Ruiz can't be your backup catcher. Like
Exactly,
he's not
exactly.
good defensively. Like a backup catcher has to be like the expert pitch, like the Austin Hedges, like the expert pitch framer, the battery mate, like the catcher, the pitchers always want to throw to, things like that. And that's not Ruiz. Like if he's gonna be anything in this league, it's gonna be offensively based, right?
Hmm.
I think we know that. So
Plus,
um
we're sorry to cut you off, but we also didn't mention, but he's had a lot of concussion issues too,
yes, right.
and
So
he
who knows how long
basically,
he still catches,
yeah, he
right?
missed most of last year with concussion
Mm-hmm.
symptoms. So like, it makes a lot of sense health wise, even just to get him out of there and try something different with him if you have to have him on the roster.
Right. So Millis, is going to be more suited to be your backup. Like he's better defensively than Ruiz, and you're not going to have Ford be your backup because he's like a top 100 prospect in many circles,
Yeah,
and
if
certainly
Ford's on the team,
valued.
we definitely want him in there.
Right, and valued as such within the Nats organization. They traded Ferrer for him. Right, they traded their closer, high upside closer, with 4 years of control for just this guy, right? So if he's on the team, he's going to be playing, right? So that's kind of the thought process that you had mentioned, and I do believe that's what we're going to end up seeing. And I think that the concussion point you just brought up about Ruiz is a great point. Not to mention the opening at DH. Ortiz at first base would be fun. I don't see it that way. It'll probably be a
Realistically, I
placeholder,
don't either, but
but I do like it. I do
if he has a
appreciate
big
it.
spring, you never know. I mean, I don't think that this group is going to be a group that looks at results in spring and says that's important, but maybe if the
Right.
process it looks good as well, he could have a chance just because
100%.
there's no answer.
Yeah. The one guy we probably should mention, because we have all these like young shiny toys now. Your CJ Abrams, James Wood, Dale Lyle had a great year last year, but even we didn't mention until like the end of the show. Brady House is someone that I like really like. Speaking of shortstops that move positions, move to third. He looks like a third baseman, dude. Like James Wood is 6'7" and a behemoth, but like Brady House is also a massive human being. I think he's like 6'5" and just looks the part of a ball player. Hit 2 home runs today in the spring training game. So it's like, he's someone that really could take a nice step forward. Like he has all the tools to be a well above average guy at third base defensively. Certainly has the pop. It's just, can he get it together more consistently? Hit for some power, some extra base hits more so than he did last year. But he's another guy that I kind of am excited to see this staff get their hands on, and this player development get their hands on, because he came up early again, almost out of necessity. I can't remember,
Yes,
was he in AAA first, or did they
he
call him?
was. Yeah, they
But
pretty
only for
much.
like a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah, I mean, he hit well in AAA last year, so at least it wasn't completely out of nowhere. But I'm pretty sure we had roster moves that forced him to come up probably too early. Um,
Right.
But I mean, speaking of the defense, there's no doubt in my mind that this guy has been studying Nolan Arenado for an entire time since he's moved over to
Mm-hmm.
third base. All his
Looks like him.
mannerism
Yep.
looks exactly like Arenado, the way he throws, the way he fields. His range looks like Arenado's, that's very special. I think just making those plays consistently is the way he elevates that. But he was a pretty damn good defender, all things considered. The bat was very much overmatched last year. There's no doubt. But obviously with all the new coaching staff and everything, he has plenty of opportunities to improve. And with his defensive abilities, he doesn't have to hit extreme like crazy. He just has to probably hit better than like a 60 WRC plus, which is what he was at last year.
Right. If
But
he hits, I mean, not that batting average is the end all be all, but like if he hits 250 with like a 790 OPS, I think that's
oh,
like
we're loving that.
what's that?
We're loving that.
Oh yeah, I thought you said oh above that. I was like, oh wow, hot take. No, like I think that's like a very reasonable step forward. One, like I think that's a sign of encouragement amongst the fan base, and I'm sure amongst the coaching staff if he does that. But it's also like within the realm of possibility. I don't think it would necessarily be surprising to see him do that either,
Yeah,
right?
he's got, well, the thing is about him too is it's just about putting the bat on the ball more consistently because he's got power to all fields. He can hit the ball out anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he really
Saw it
likes,
today.
yeah, exactly. Before he came up last year, it seemed like he liked to go opposite field more often, which is totally fine when you have his pop. He can go out that way. He did it a couple times. In I think he hit like 4 homers last year, and 2 of them were oppo.
Mm-hmm.
So he definitely has that going for him. It's just avoiding the strikeout, avoiding the swing and miss. So that was definitely a big problem for him last year. But yeah, I'll take if he can give me 100 WRC plus and good defense.
Yep.
That's a huge win. I'm taking that, and because then you can look at him and be like, all right, this kid's still young and is still improving.
Yeah, it's
Um,
amazing how like after years and years post World Series, like we're just begging for like
for some
league
level of
average
improvement.
WRC plus.
Yeah,
Like
just show some improvement and we'll be good.
right. Oh man. No, but I think overall, like your projected roster, bullpen and lineup look pretty much about right. Like there will inevitably be things, that pop up that
Yeah, and
are
this
slightly
also
different,
is
but
based on health too. There's probably
sure.
going to be some injury or something that happens, especially like, obviously with this rotating bullpen of guys. There's so many bullpen options,
Hmm.
we could not possibly project that. But um, yeah, I think there's definitely reasons to be optimistic that there will be improvement with the guys that we already have. Like there's signs there, and almost every guy has something that he has a skill that can be, if they can optimize that skill, he can be a good player. So,
Yeah.
um, there's definitely reasons to be optimistic for that. On paper, maybe not so much in terms of the roster construction. I wouldn't, if I was just judging based on that, I'd probably say this is about a 60 to 65 win team, which could end up being where we are. But if we see improvements from individual guys, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a development year. We'll see who takes a step forward, and I think the guys that don't will probably be the guys that we don't see next year.
Yeah,
I
no, it's definitely going to be a rotating door.
mhm. So we'll just kind of see how it all plays out. If there are major moves, it'll be in the trade department, similar to what the Rays do and the Brewers do. The Brewers were a playoff team last year, had a nice run and traded their ace to another
And they'll
team that's
probably they'll probably win 90 games this
exactly
year.
right. So it's like, even though that's not the most fun model, it's one that's proven to at least be competitive when it's done right. So I think that's what the Nats are going for, but it's going to take time. Those weren't built overnight. So, we'll just kind of have to see how it plays out, but we're going to try to be, as consistent as we can be throughout the season. We'll definitely check in again before the season starts, talk, a little bit more once we have a better idea what the, roster looks like, the 26 man, what the projected opening day roster looks like, and things like that. We'll dive a little bit deeper. We didn't talk about Dylan Cruz much either. That's a big name that we want to see, an improvement from last year, coming off an injury that I'm sure was probably prolonged because there was just no need to bring him back, to rush him back. But we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of these players that are, projected to be our everyday guys. Talk about the season and stay in touch throughout the year because again, I'm excited. Like I needed this badly.
Yeah.
It got really tough to be a Nationals fan. Yeah, it is the living embodiment of the age old questions. Like, would you take your team winning World Series if you sucked for the next 10 years? And it's like that's kind of like
I'm still saying yes,
yeah,
but it's
it's
getting harder.
right. Like, the answer is pretty much always yes, flags fly forever. But we are living that right now. And boy, you know, glory does not come cheap. So, yeah, I think there's plenty of reasons to be excited. It's just you also have to be patient. You also have to understand that this is going to take some time, that not only these players but this staff and this front office need time to for their vision to become reality, right? To get their guys in and develop these guys and whatnot. So we can look for small victories in the meantime, because as Trey mentioned, I don't think there's going to be many big victories in the win column this year, but that's all right, right? If these guys take a step forward, then then we'll be all right, and we will be following and checking in throughout the off season talking about it. But Trey, any final thoughts before we wrap this highly anticipated, long overdue comeback episode?
Yeah, not much besides, just what you're saying. We got to be patient, and it's gonna be at least exciting to see who can develop and who's gonna be a part of this team in the future.
Yep, absolutely. So in the meantime, follow us on District Base on Twitter at District BSB, District Baseball. Again, we will be checking in throughout the season. We'll definitely talk again before the season gets underway. But in the meantime, appreciate you guys. I know it's been a while, but be sure to like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. And we will talk to you guys soon. Until then, let's go Nats.